All right. Welcome into the teaching portion of tonight. I'm excited you're here tonight. Again, you picked the perfect night to be here because we're starting a new series that we're going to do. So we're going to journey for the next few weeks. We've been talking about some ways to read and understand the Bible and some bigger concepts. And we wanted to take a few weeks and finish off the fall with actually doing this together. We wanted to choose a book and actually read together. And so tonight we are going to start thinking about the book of Colossians. And my encouragement to you in this series is start reading this book. If this book actually is the words of God, and if you've ever wanted to feel God communicate to you and you haven't had that experience where you actually felt God communicating to you and heard God's voice and felt him compelling you to do something or compelling you into relationship, if this really is his words and you make time to read and spend time in this, you will hear and experience God communicating to you if this is really his words. And so my challenge, my encouragement to you is over the next few weeks, read Colossians with us. Read Colossians with us. Do it on your own. Get a reading guide that we have in the bins. If you want to do this together, maybe find some friends and start reading this together and journey slowly with these ideas and chew on it together. Find a reading group. There's reading groups happening. There's so many ways to engage. My encouragement is to you. I know this is not a normal thing to do with your friends at school or with many people around, but my life changed because God became real to me. And then I started to hear his voice more and more through this book. And my hope is that would happen for you as well through this series and our time spent together. Okay, so the first question that will help start our conversation is, what are the New Testament letters to you? Colossians exists in what we call the New Testament, and it was a letter written by a specific person to a specific group of other people. And I wonder, in the past, as you've thought about this piece of the Bible, or even read it on your own, what has been your approach to this part of the Bible? For me, I would come to this part of the Bible and the letters in the New Testament, and I saw it as more of a theology textbook. It had correct beliefs. This part of the Bible would tell me what I should believe and what I should not believe. This part of the Bible would have a clear boundary and guidelines for do this, don't do this. Follow Jesus in this way, don't follow Jesus in that way. And I had kind of a textbook approach. I wonder what your thoughts are about this book. Is this like a rule book that helps people go to the good place and avoid the bad place? Is that what the New Testament letters are all about? Is the New Testament letters, are they just letters that contain lots of inspiring, inspirational, spiritual quotes that can help you get through your day and inspire you to do different things? Is that what this is? How have you thought about this book? And the more that I learn how to approach these letters, my approach of having a textbook is not what these letters are. Okay, so if these New Testament letters are not any of the things that I just said to you, if those examples are incorrect about what these New Testament letters are, then what are they? What are they supposed to be used for? What are they helpful for? And the first helpful way to think about these is that they are actual letters. Like a real person sat down with a specific reason to write a letter to a specific group of people. And when we sit down to read these New Testament letters, we are reading someone else's mail. And sometimes we only have one piece of a multi-part conversation. Now, we have a fun way for you guys to interact with this idea. And your leaders have a letter to read to you that I wrote to my best friend, Lada. So hopefully that was pretty fun for you guys to experience a letter that I would write to my best friend, Lada. I guarantee you there's nothing in that letter that my best friend Lada would not understand. Everything in that letter that I wrote to him, he would not need me to explain anything. And my guess is that you sitting there at your home group, there are lots of things that you didn't understand. There's pieces of information or names or lots of things in there that you're like, I don't understand what that is, who that is, where that is, what they're talking about. Like, why did they call it that? Like, why is this happening? Like, what's the backstory? That experience is the same experience that you and I have when we come to these New Testament letters. Okay, so these New Testament letters are actual letters written by people to other people that they care about. So that's where they start. And when you and I read them, we're reading their mail. And the next question that we want to ask is, okay, if that's what they are, what are these New Testament authors aiming to communicate and aiming to accomplish for those other people that they're writing to? As you dig into the letters, most, if not all, of the authors who are writing these letters are writing to solve a problem, to resolve a conflict that is happening between people. There's a problem that's happening in that community, and they're writing to be able to solve that problem. There's something that is happening, and these authors are writing to step into that problem to help solve that problem. And if you have this framework and lens, when you read the New Testament letters, you'll start realizing that the New Testament authors are doing something. They are taking the fundamental principles from the Old Testament and from the teachings of Jesus, who they've just been around for years. And they are applying those things to the specific problems and the specific circumstances and the specific life situations of the people who they're writing to. And so they're experts in the Old Testament. They're experts in Jesus's teachings, and they've sat on those things, and they've thought about those things, and they've meditated on those things for a long, 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 long time. And so they're expert in those fundamentals. And then there's these problems that come up, and they say, okay, I know what would be the most helpful thing to help those people navigate those problems. And they sit down most of the time with a team of their friends, and they compose these letters, and then they send them off in hopes that God would speak through them to help solve those problems. Now, I don't know if you like jazz music. I don't really like jazz music, but I've heard people talk about jazz music who really, really love it. And the process that jazz musicians have with music and their artistry is very similar to what is happening here with the New Testament authors. Here, listen to how this guy talks about jazz.
People that I know who are jazz artists always say, you know what bothers me? It is this notion that all we do is improvise, and nobody tends to appreciate, that the serious sense of structure that's there.
Sure.
And how much work goes into creating that. What are the cliches that
Well,
are overworked?
one of the major cliches is that it just, the muse strikes, bang,
Yeah, right.
lightning comes down and you all of a sudden you can just, ideas flow. Well,
That is
they
one great
flow-
jam session.
Yeah, right. But they come if you, as Charlie Parker and other great artists have done, if you've prepared yourself. It's the same as someone who's an excellent speaker. In order to communicate with words, that person has to know how to put those words together, not just in sentences, but in meaningful phrases that will capture some image or make you or me feel something. This is what great jazz musicians do. And in doing that, they take all of the elements of the music. I mean, I sometimes take my own music when I demonstrate this to people who are not musicians. For instance, if I took a piece written by George Gershwin, they can't take that away from me. Now, one of the things, first of all, I have to know that tune. I have to learn that tune. So I have to know how did Gershwin put that together. So that's, for openers, I've got to start somewhere, so I have to know what his harmonies were. Then if I'm going to change that at all, as I might want to do, I might want to change it rhythmically so that it sounds more, maybe I want a kind of a happy feeling. Well, okay, if you do that, you've changed the rhythm, but I mentioned melody, harmony, and rhythm. Okay, that's rhythm. How about harmony? Okay, now I've changed the rhythm and the harmony, so why not change the melody?
Okay, so when we engage and read these New Testament letters, we need to remember who the people are who are writing them. They are experts in the Old Testament. The story about God and humans and God interacting with humans and what does he want for them, what does he want to do through them, and the history that keeps going generation after generation after generation. How does God reveal himself and interact with those generations? They are experts in that story. And then Jesus comes along and teaches, and Jesus is an expert in that story. And then he is riffing off that story and revealing the true nature behind that story where people have got it wrong a little bit. Jesus kind of tweaks it and tries to get people to see here's the true reality of what God was revealing himself to be in that story. And then these New Testament authors are the next in the story. They sat with Jesus and they were experts in the Old Testament story. And then they're here and they're riffing off those things to be able to solve problems and navigate real life situations that are happening for the people that they really care about. And here's one key idea that I really want you guys to hear and think about of this is a key way that the Bible was preserved for you. And these New Testament letters specifically were preserved for you. As we learn how these New Testament authors applied the truth that they knew to their real life situations and circumstances, how they took what they were experts in and the fundamentals of who God is, what God is like, who are humans, what does God want to do through humans, like all of the fundamentals that are contained in the Old Testament and the Jesus stories, they take those and take them to real life situations. And as we see them do it, we can learn how they're doing it and be able to learn from them. We learn from them because we have real life situations too. We have real life problems. We need help on navigating so many things that we come against. And as we learn how the New Testament authors applied theology, applied truth about God, about like scripture that they were immersed in and sat in and they were experts in, what we call the Old Testament, we see how they took that truth and lived it out in their real life. We can learn how to do the same as well. Okay, so if you're sitting there and kind of approached this book like I did, like a moral textbook, and got frustrated because it's not written like a textbook, it has stories and poetry and prophets' writings, and then letters to their friends. Like, if you've approached it that way and got frustrated, if you've approached it like a spiritual inspiration grab bag and misunderstood key things that these letters are actually teaching, or if you have a thought of this book as something that helps people avoid the bad place and takes them to the good place, you'll if you have that lens, you'll just miss out on so much of what this story actually is and what is actually happening in this story and with the people and what God wants to do through people. And so if it's not any of those things, and this New Testament letter to the Colossians is Paul and a group of people writing to a group of people that they really care about to help them solve a problem, how do we start engaging in this letter in a helpful way? Like, what's a helpful first step for you and me to start getting into this letter? And a helpful first step is make the characters real people in real life situations, because these are real people who lived in history like you and me, and they're dealing with real life challenges like you and I do. And so if we're going to understand what the conversation is here, we need to just make them real people and try to understand as much as we can what's happening in their real life situation and what are the challenges that they're facing. And as we make them real people, their real conversation will begin to be more understandable to you and me. So to help you guys get a head start on this, to help make these people real and their life situation real, here's the beginning of a Bible Project video on the book of Colossians. And after this video stops, have fun in your small group conversations. Peace.
Paul's letter to the Colossians. It was written during one of Paul the Apostle's many imprisonments for announcing Jesus as the risen Lord. And the letter is addressed to a group of people that Paul had never met who made up a church community that he didn't start. This church in Colossae was started by a co-worker of Paul's named Epaphras, who was actually from that city. And Epaphras had recently visited Paul in prison, and he updated him on how well the Colossians were doing overall, but he also mentioned some of the cultural pressures tempting them to turn away from Jesus. And so Paul wrote this letter to encourage the Colossians to address the issues that Epaphras had raised, and then to challenge them to a greater devotion to Jesus.